Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Safe Travels podcast. My name is Joey. Today, we are at Mesa Verde National Park in southwestern Colorado, and I had the chance to sit down with Interpretive Park Ranger and Public Information Officer Dalton Dorrell. Dalton and I chatted all about this incredible national park, from park history to general park information and a whole lot more. Dalton, I am so excited to talk with you. You're an interpretive park ranger here at Mesa Verde National Park, but I know you've had a long journey through the National Park Service. So what's it been like to this point getting to Mesa Verde?
Yeah, well, I actually started in land management when I was 12 years old on a bicycle for the U.S. Forest Service. I was a volunteer at that time. Actually, pretty close. I grew up pretty close to here, so I was working for San Juan National Forest. And I was lucky enough to be able to be close enough to Forest Service land I could ride my bike. Honestly, this far down the road, I don't really remember all my motivations for why I decided I wanted to work during that time. But it worked out. I joked that I was partially raised by the Forest Service. And then when I got into college, I started working seasonally for the Park Service. Seasonally, I worked for Capitol Reef National Park and Natural Bridges National Monument. I did a few years at El Malpais National Monument, New Mexico. Then I worked at Yellowstone National Park for a few years, then Zion National Park. And then I like to think I came back home. About 10 years of wandering with the National Park Service, and I have never found anywhere better than Southwest Colorado.
That's quite the journey. As a 12-year-old riding your bike into the forest, what were you doing in land management?
Some of it was just picking up trash, that sort of thing. I must have wanted to help out in a big way. If I'm going to be out there riding my bike, I might as well be doing something, I think is what I was thinking. And then I was talking to the visitors of the forest, and it got back around to my ranger district, the district office for the Forest Service, that there's someone out there and he's nice to talk to, that sort of thing. So sometimes I joke, then I was tricked into working in the actual office at the visitor desk. But obviously that's worked out because I still work at visitor desks, but now for the National Park Service.
It's easy to fall in love with nature and the outdoors when you have the beautiful San Juans right around the corner, of course, Mesa Verde here. Mm-hmm. But was land management and your stewardship acts, was that spurred by your parents? Did you grow up in an outdoorsy family?
Yeah, I was raised by my mom, and we're a very outdoorsy family. We didn't use that term. It was just natural. But we went camping, or at least a walk, I would say almost every single weekend. And some luck involved. We're in a place that it was easy to do that, right? But no doubt that inspired it. That first and foremost, but I went years going up to Montana, where my grandparents and great-grandma lived, and I would spend a few weeks each summer with them. And we would do big trips around Montana or the Pacific Northwest. I have a picture of myself when I was probably 10 or so at the Ranger Museum in Yellowstone. So, yeah, absolutely inspired by family with it.
When you got to the NPS, was your mission always to be in interpretation and educating visitors?
Before that, I was telling people I was this type of child. I was telling people that I wanted to be an interpreter in the National Park Service when I was 12.
Wow. No. So how does it make you feel now to wear the gray and green?
It's great. It's part of me. There was a little bit of time where I went to grad school that I was thinking about other things, but essentially, as soon as I left, I realized that I made the right choice. I joke it was my early life crisis.
It's one of my favorite things about Park Ranger. I talk about it all the time on this podcast is you don't meet anybody in any other profession that's as madly in love with what they do than a park ranger wearing the green and gray. It's always great to talk with people like you.
Yeah, it's definitely a good part about working for this agency and land management as a whole.
So let's focus now on Mesa Verde and this incredible, iconic national park that we're at. If you don't mind, what's the general overview of why people come to this beautiful place?
Yeah, Mesa Verde, located in southwestern Colorado. It's on the Colorado Plateau, but it's a mesa on the Colorado Plateau, technically a cuesta. I think we'll get more into geology later, but cuesta is just a slightly tilted mesa, and that's really important for why agriculture works so well here. But yes, our cuesta on the Colorado Plateau here, there's really two main districts of the park. That's how I look at it. We don't usually use that term, but we have a section that's open year-round. That's the main park road, and then Chapin Mesa. That's where we are right now. And then we have the Wetherell area of the park too. Wetherell's only open seasonal, but has some amazing things. I'll say it right now. If you do plan to go to Wetherell, you're going to want to do your homework. It's not, even in the summer right now, it's not open every day of the week. It has specific hours. We close it every night. This main Chapin area of the park, the ancestral sites close at sunset, but the roads open all night long, like what you expect from a lot of national parks.
The reason why people come here is because of the culture story that's here, the ancestral Puebloans. What about that brings people here to explore these beautiful structures?
Absolutely. I mean, the Mesa Verde was the first national park that was created because of something humans made, first and foremost. I don't believe there's any such thing as a natural and a cultural park. I think it always blurs, but a lot of people think that way. And I think that's what makes Mesa Verde so special. It has such an important cultural story, the story of the ancestral Puebloans, and that story continues to this day with the modern Pueblos and tribes that are still connected to Mesa Verde. It's got that rich story, but I love working here because the visitors that come here are ready for a cultural story that's already in their mind. At other parks I worked at, sometimes it was a surprise there was a cultural element. You know, you think of some of the parks I worked at. Let's go with Zion and Yellowstone. A lot of those people are coming mainly for what they view as natural and are surprised by that cultural story. Here they come for the cultural story, and maybe sometimes are surprised how much what we consider the natural landscape is part of that story. You can't remove humans and understand this landscape, and you can't understand the landscape without humans, because humans have been here since time immemorial, thousands of years. And I love that about Mesa Verde. People more ready to hear that story is so awesome. And it's one of the reasons I really wanted to work here.
And why is that story so powerful here, in your opinion?
We have the Alco sites, the cliff dwellings, and they were protected. We have thousands of what archaeologists would call archaeological sites all throughout the Mesa, the Cuesta, and it's most of them are covered by sediment, blue in here. And that's true of a lot of the Southwest. Mesa Verde is by no means an ancestral Puebloan island. The ancestral Puebloans, even during Mesa Verde's time, were all throughout the Four Corners area and beyond. But here at Mesa Verde, those alcoves were so protected that it's in your face in a way. You see it, it's interesting, you want to learn more the second you see it. We have Mesa Top sites too that were excavated and now protected, so you can see that story too, which is really the bulk of Mesa Verde's story in a way. But it's a great place to dive into ancestral Puebloan history, but also just Southwestern culture as a whole.
In the early 1900s, this area was also designated as a World Heritage Site. What does that mean, and what does that encompass?
Yeah, being a World Heritage Site, that it just shows that national parks are important and have an impact far beyond the boundaries of the United States, right? It's recognized as an important cultural site for the world. You know, if you're going to look at the world and what is culturally significant about it, looking at those World Heritage Sites as a guide, it's a good way to do it. Mesa Verde being part of that, that's pretty special.
A couple of answers ago, you talked about you can't understand the landscapes without humans. You can't understand the humans without this landscape. So we'll talk about the humans in a little bit, but I do want to focus on the geology right now. You mentioned a little bit about the Mesa versus Cuesta landscape here. What's the general geology of this area? How did this area form?
Yeah, so we have sedimentary layers. It's all sedimentary. Anything else flowed in from mountains that are not in the park proper. So those sedimentary layers laid down primarily in ocean environments, shallow ocean environments or coastal. Eventually, during the same time that the Rocky Mountains were uplifting, the Colorado Plateau uplifted and Mesa Verde uplifted a little bit more and tilts to the south. And this geology set the stage of why Mesa Verde is so culturally significant too. I mentioned that tilt of the Cuesta. It's tilting ever so slightly to the south. So it's south facing. And that actually captured more sunlight, longer growing season. It was actually for the dryland agriculture the ancestral Puebloans were practicing. That tilt made a difference, an important difference. In some ways, it was a better place to farm using those techniques. And that tie between geology and that cultural story goes even further. The alcoves, they weren't carved. They weren't carved by people. They are natural features. They're geologic features. The cliff house sandstone that really surrounds the cliff dwellings, it's porous. And rainwater, snow melt that falls on top percolates through it, essentially. And then right below it is a layer of shale. And that shale, in a way, repels water. It's definitely not absorbing it like the sandstone above it can. And at that seam, water is forced out in areas. Those are seep springs. And those seep springs, those areas where the water is coming out, the sandstone is in constant contact with the water, and that dissolves essentially the cements that's holding the sand grains together. It's calcium carbonate, and that creates a weakness. Slowly but surely, that weakness is exploited by things like frost wedging. That's when the water freezes, primarily in the winter. The water expands, breaks up big chunks of rock that falls, slowly creating the alcoves. Some of the cliff dwellings were made by the debris from those alcoves that fell on the bottom. Some of it brought in, some of it just the debris that was there. So we would not have cliff dwellings without a very, very specific geology. That's pretty unique to Mesa Verde. We have around 600 cliff dwellings in Mesa Verde National Park. Most of them are smaller, maybe family units or storage units. They're not all cliff palace or balcony house or longhouse. But nearly all of them are at that seam between that sandstone and that shale. So again, and I do have a history background. I will say I'm biased in that way, but environmental history. So I just can't remove the human story from the natural environment. Again, that's why Mesa Verde is so cool.
That's a great explanation and very fascinating. How had vegetation and wildlife played a role in the communities, allowing them to thrive here in Mesa Verde?
Yeah, we get asked a lot if 700 years ago Mesa Verde looked the same as today. And it did, essentially. It's the same plants and animals. It's still pinyon juniper woodland. It'd be deer and bear and desert bighorn sheep. That's one that we don't have here anymore. That during the time of the ancestral Puebloans, we would have had here. And in a way that helps shape the people here, right? That's learning these ingenious ways over hundreds of years, thriving here in constant contact with these plants and animals. It all becomes almost one culture that involves plants and animals, right? You're coexisting together. You couldn't have had the story of Mesa Verde anywhere else. You could not have had it. It's not something you can replicate. So the landscape is part of that story. Yes, you could have had something similar, but not exactly, right? These alcoves here, that's so special. And that's just one example.
What sort of protection did those alcoves provide to the structures that they're built in?
enormous amount of protection. It's why all the way back in 1906, people were interested in protecting them because it was so unique. Cliff Palace is the biggest cliff dwelling in North America. It's enormous. In some ways that it protected them, but also today you can almost think that it protected them on the surface in a way you didn't have to excavate at least as much to see them. The Weatheralls that they're one of the first like Euro-Americans to publicize Mesa Verde and talk about it. When they saw it for the first time, they saw big cliff dwellings, right? But most of our sites are actually buried with that sediment. And I'd almost make an argument that they're more protected buried. They're not exposed to the elements. They're going to stay virtually as they are now for as long until they get exposed. So it depends. I know maybe this is getting too much into the weeds, but it depends on how you're looking at protected. But yeah, and one way we protect ancestral sites at Mesa Verde is not excavating them, because they're going to stay in a better state ultimately if they aren't.
Which is a testament to their original build, right, in the alcoves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how intact a lot of the cliff dwellings were right away. Another very common question, for good reason, at Mesa Verde is, how much did you guys restore? And by you guys, they mean the Park Service and archaeologists. And it's a tough question to answer, actually. Often we say, it depends on the site, but maybe between 70 and 90% is original. But also, where is the line of restoration? If they were stabilizing it and used the exact same rock that the ancestral Puebloans used in that space, it just fell next to it and they put it back while they were removing other debris. Is that restoration? Maybe to a degree. But in some ways, I guess the line is what was clearing it out for the debris that fell over hundreds of years and what was a restoration. But between 70 and 90% original for most of those cliff dwellings, and a lot of it virtually untouched by archaeologists in the Park Service as far as restoration goes.
How differently did the people who have lived here, did they utilize the landscape? I think when you come here and you see these structures in the alcoves, the first thought that came to my mind is, how did they even access this structure? It's in such rugged and tough terrain, and it's a beautiful structure, but how do they maneuver in and out of this on a daily basis? What did it look like for them to maneuver around this landscape?
First off, this is their home. There's two parts to that. And you know your home well, right? This is generations of people living here. So I do think that just movement in this area, even though we're not used to using these little carved in hand and toe holds to get back and forth between the place where we work and the place that we live in a way. We don't do that every day. If you did do it every day, you'd be pretty used to it and you'd be good at it. But also the cliff dwellings, they are very, very special. They're impressive in so many ways. But one of the big misconceptions I think that visitors have is that that's the main story of Mesa Verde. The ancestral Puebloans were actively living on Mesa Verde for about 700 years, but it was only the last 100 years, give or take, that they were using the cliff dwellings in the way we think of it. And there were still people on the mesa top living up there, farming up there when people were in the cliff dwellings. If you're looking, sometimes I'm asked, what's the most typical way people were living? There's a lot of ways to look at that question, but really it was all mesa top. It was different ways on the mesa top, and that changed throughout time. But again, the mesa top is harder to picture and conceptualize because there's just not as much of it available because it's underground. But that's why I highly recommend, if you come to Mesa Verde, don't make it all about cliff dwellings. Go to somewhere like the Farview sites, or with Weatherall Mesa open, there's so many more opportunities. There's like Badger House community out there, Two Ravens House. We've got the Mesa Top Loop. That's probably my favorite loop in the park. more or less chronologically goes through ancestral Puebloan time here at Mesa Verde. Starts with a pit house, which was the earliest home structure that they're living in. There's the Mesa Top Pueblos you can see, and then there's arguably the best view of Cliff Palace towards the end of that loop. The actual Cliff Palace overlook, which is on the loop that is named Cliff Palace Loop, it's kind of shoved up next to it. It's still really impressive, but the Sun Temple view of Cliff Palace on the Mesa Top Loop, that's from across the canyon, and you see how big it really was from that view. So I really highly encourage, make sure you spend a good amount of time at the Mesa Top sites as well. Don't make it all about cliff dwellings.
That's great advice, because there's a lot of people at the overlooks where the cliff dwellings are at. For folks who are doing trip planning, the park, even the website states to do trip planning at least 2 weeks in advance, if not more, I'm sure you would suggest. But if you really do want to get up close and personal, I guess, with the cliff dwellings on a tour, those have to be booked. Can you walk through that process on how folks can get on a tour and experience that? Because it's not like you can just walk up to the cliff dwellings and experience them that way.
Right. Yes. Please do some research before you come to Mesa Verde, because if you want to go into a cliff dwelling, you have to be on a ranger guided tour. You actually have to be with a ranger because of a law passed by Congress, because that was better protection, right? Having park staff with you, because they are fragile. We do a lot of tours a day. We do over 20 every single day of different sites. There's a lot of opportunities, but they do fill still. You have to make reservations on recreation.gov 2 weeks in advance. It opens at 8 a.m. Mountain Time 2 weeks in advance. And especially if you want to do some that we don't offer as many of, we actually have some tours we call backcountry. Right now, we only have Square Tower House, but that tour is once a day and 10 people. Where Cliff Palace, it has over 10 a day and 50 people. So it depends on what you're trying to get out of your trip, but at the very least, yes, 2 weeks and 1 day in advance, so you can be ready that next day to hop on recreation.gov and find the tours you want. But if maybe you don't want to go on a tour, maybe you're going on winter, where we don't offer tours in winter, as long as you're ready for what's available, it's still a blast. I'm so happy that Step House is open. On days that Wetherell Mesa is open, Step House is a self-guided cliff dwelling. How that works is there's a ranger down there the whole time it's open. So you can come down there. It's a great time to have a relaxed conversation with a ranger about cliff dwellings and ancestral Puebloans and Mesa Verde as a whole. It's a mile round trip. There's some elevation change, so I would call it a semi-strenuous 1 mile for only being 1 mile, but it's only 1 mile. And so there are some of those opportunities. In winter, you've got that Mesa Top Loop. We try and keep that plowed. It's quieter. You have plenty of time to yourself during that time. And on years we get enough snow, there's cross-country skiing, which is pretty amazing, skiing through this landscape, and imagining that time of year too, right? When you come in summer, often you only think about how we're ancestral Puebloan people living here in those summer months, but it might have looked pretty different in the winter. And I encourage, as long as you're ready for it, you can have a good visit anytime you're at Mesa Verde. But if you want to get in a cliff dwelling, 2 weeks and 1 day in advance, start planning or more.
How important is it to you, or do you think it is for folks when they come here to come with an open mind and an open heart to learn about the culture of this area?
It's very important. I would say more than any other park that I've worked at, it's a park where you have to do some sort of either reading or, I'm going to call it research, some sort of research, whatever your style of research is. Maybe it is listening to something like this podcast. That's great. That's a great way to get some background, either before or while you're here. Going on the ranger guided activities. We have the cliff dwellings, which are those tours, and there is a fee, $8 per person. But we also have free programs too. Evening programs in the campground. We do talks at the Overlook for Spruce Treehouse every day. We have special events that are free. Picking up a brochure, watching our movie, reading those wayside informational signs at the sites. You need some of that because otherwise you're not going to see how connected Mesa Verde is. And I'm sure you're going to hear this from other park staff in some way, shape, or form, maybe even in this podcast right now if you keep listening to Mesa Verde ones. But Mesa Verde is so connected. I phrase it as horizontal and vertical connections. And what I mean by that is horizontal connections through ancestral Puebloan time, and then vertical connections through time to where we are today. You have so much of that here. And you look at Mesa Verde and you go, wow, this is in the middle of nowhere. But to me, it's one of the most connected places I'm going to go as far to say the world. It is connected in so many ways. The ancestral Puebloan world was, like I said, this whole what's now the Four Corners region and a little bit beyond. The ancestral Puebloans were trading macaw feathers with down into Mexico, what's now Mexico, seashells, a lot of trade going on, bustling, thousands of people living in this area. Even Mesa Verde, what's now the actual park, there could have been 5,000 plus people living here at certain times, even though it's really tough to figure that out exactly. And then those vertical connections to today. We have 27 affiliated tribes with Mesa Verde, 21 descendant communities. You can learn so much about the Southwest by starting at Mesa Verde. Let's phrase it like that, because I always hope that if this is your first visit to this region and thinking about Southwestern culture as a whole, I really hope this is a jumping off point for that. I hope this is an inspirational stop to keep going to other maybe more archaeological ancestral sites. A lot of them managed by the Park Service, like Chaco Culture National Historical Park or Aztec Ruins or Hoven Weep. There's quite a few, but also modern Pueblos and tribes, going to their museums, their days that they're open for the public. This really should be a springboard into that, and I think it is for a lot of people.
I like that you said that too, because historically this was a jumping off point in a migration pattern to further down into the Southwest. A lot of common questions here revolve around, well, where did the ancestral Puebloans go? And that answer is they migrated southwest, correct, from this area?
South, generally just south, I would think of it. There's descendant communities in what's now Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. But yes, it's where did the people go? The answer is not far at all. And this area was never forgotten by the Pueblos. Again, it's just so connected as a whole, even to these modern Pueblos that, it's in the name Ancestral Puebloan, right? It's the ancestors of the modern Pueblo people. It's very descriptive. They didn't disappear. It was part of a migration period, which was more like living up in this area less and focusing on areas where there was more water. Archaeologists think a big reason for leaving this area was that was getting drier. There's a big drought. There's a series of droughts, actually. But that could have been a major reason why people left this area, at least living here full time, going south. But it's so connected. I was saying earlier off camera that when you're at the highest point in the Park Point, there's a fire tower there. On a clear day, you can essentially see modern Pueblos. You can see deep into the Navajo, the Navajo Nation. we're still in the region. It wasn't going very far, that's for sure. It was more focusing on areas with more water is what it seems to be.
Sometimes when you come to a place that's culturally rich, just like Mesa Verde is, sometimes it can be uncomfortable asking questions if you don't have a good sense of knowledge of indigenous history and Native American history. What would you say to those folks who want to learn but might feel uncomfortable asking questions that kind of maybe exposes a lack of direct knowledge of the history here, and wanting to get to know more about the ancestral tribes that have and continue to exist in the area?
Ask them, and just don't be afraid to be maybe redirected a little bit, right? It's all part of the process. And I mean, we're sitting on the porch of one of the first educational buildings the Park Service ever built. This was repurposed in 1917 and 1918 as a museum and a place to educate visitors. And Mesa Verde remains that, right? This is a place you should be asking those questions. Be curious, and don't be afraid to maybe be a little bit wrong. Rangers, other people working here, that's what we're here. We don't take it personally, right? That's what we're here for. Ask those questions. Don't be afraid. We're all learning together. I'm still asking questions, and I will be asking questions about the culture of this area for my whole life, I'm sure. So just don't be afraid. It's not as scary as it might seem.
Again, with how rich in culture this area is, how important is respecting this landscape when you're walking in the footprints of ancestors who have walked these same trails, these same canyons for thousands of years?
We say it all the time, and I personally don't think we can say it too much. We use the phrase visit with respect out here. And that means realizing that these places are still used, still cared for, still loved. They're not ruins. They're places that maybe it's best to slow down a little bit. There's the obvious things. Don't pick up potsherds and take them home. Don't even take them to a ranger. Just report that you found them, where you found them, and leave them where they are. That's very important. But maybe one of the more obvious ways you can help protect Mesa Verde and visit with respect. Don't lean on walls. Don't sit on walls in ancestral sites. But also just slow down a little bit. I lead a lot of school visits for like elementary schoolers and middle, high school, even college, but especially those younger grades. I often say, like, still use classroom voices, that sort of thing. Think about what does respect mean to you? And I bet you if you just think through that before you go through these ancestral sites, your version of respect is exactly what we're looking for.
Earlier in the podcast, you mentioned the cuestas and you mentioned the alcoves and how humans and landscape here go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. They support each other. And what other ways did the geology of this landscape support the ancestral pueblones that lived here?
Oh, it all did in a way. That's what makes it such a hard question. Everything from the park is essentially all sandstone. So if you need anything else, like let's say a harder rock for an axe, or you need chert for an arrowhead, then you have to trade. Or travel for it. Especially like the harder rock, we have mountains fairly close that are more or less washing into parts of the park, but it's still like a 5-mile or so walk from a lot of these places to get to that hard rock, let alone like good hard chert for your arrowheads. So what the landscape has and what it doesn't have are both ways that it would have influenced life here. Now, trade seems to be very important for Mesa Verde. It's not all just these really big examples like macaw feathers, parrot feathers, essentially from what's now Mexico. It's also smaller things like we see pottery and clay that came from what's now Utah, pretty close, but they saw something in it and wanted that red color. We don't have the red colored clay that you can find right in the park. We're more known for that grayware and black on white, that sort of thing. So lots of trade. And I think that was also part of the landscape. Just as much what you have, what you don't have is just as important as what you do have and influence life here.
Is there a balance with a park like this in knowing everything versus understanding the mystery of it? I know with some cultures, some things are private, and how people lived their lives can be mysterious to us, important to the cultures and ancestral Puebloans that lived here that they want to keep it private. Is there some of that balance here in this park as well of over knowing or over digging for research and knowledge?
Absolutely. There's information that culturally is reserved just for certain people or groups in descendant communities. And you're absolutely right. We don't need to know all of that to still get a deep understanding of Mesa Verde and be able to protect this place and see why it's so important. So absolutely, there's a line there in some ways. And I think maybe in a way that makes it more special because this is still a living place, right? That's what makes that such a hard question. It's so easy to think of it as a place that was abandoned, and it was anything but. This is still very much in the memory of a lot of Pueblo community members. And it still is, right? Those meanings, it's not like they learned everything they learned about Mesa Verde in the past and never thought of it again. They're still learning in a way. I hope that gets at the question because it is a hard question, but a really important question. But yes, we don't need to learn everything about it to care and to see how important it is. And again, get a deep, deep understanding of it.
Like a couple of the neighboring parks in the area, Black Canyon and Great Sand Dunes, this is also a dark sky park.
Yep.
What's the significance of enjoying the dark sky here, knowing that people have enjoyed the dark sky in this very place on a landscape that looks very similar to what it does today, and looking up in the sky and seeing a sky that probably resembles pretty closely to what ancestors saw thousands of years ago?
Oh, yeah. What a great point, because again, people come here and they are thinking of a cultural story. They're ready for a cultural story. So trying to blend the night sky with that as much as we can. We are so well suited for that here at Mesa Verde. I love adding those cultural stories to the night sky as much as I can when I'm talking night sky here. But yeah, just imagine if you go on a tour or even a Mesa top site, let's say you're there, you're seeing it more or less empty. But it was anything but when it was occupied. There were so many sights and sounds. There was probably singing and the sound of grinding corn, and there was trading, and there was family members talking, and there was all this going on. It was very, very rich. And then also thinking about like all that was going on, and you can see a similar night sky to what they would be seeing. You can see a similar landscape. You can look across to the La Plata Mountains in the day or night. Like if the moon's full, you can see that glistening on the snow. Being an international dark sky at such a culturally focused park, I think it's really special, and I'm so glad we have that designation.
We talked, obviously, a lot of the culture in this park, as we should, because that's a lot of what this park is about. But the drive into this area is also beautiful. The geology, which we've also mentioned, is incredible. How important is it for people to go the speed limit and kind of take in the geology and the natural landscape and enjoy that drive in? Because the drive to the Mesa Verde Museum is a long one. Mm-hmm. But if you look around and kind of envision the people that have existed here, and you talked about the thriving communities, does that add to the experience when you're on that drive, just looking around and kind of conceptualizing what these villages and communities look like?
Oh, absolutely. I love that drive. I drive it every single day twice. I don't live right here at Chapin Mesa, and I'm glad. I enjoy it every time. It is important to take your time on that road because the geology made it very windy. It's slow. It's a 20-mile drive from the park entrance to the Chapin area, the headquarters area where Spruce Tree House and the museum is. But it takes you 45 minutes, and if you're stopping at all, easily much, much longer. And it is a time to reflect. You get some huge views. You can see well into Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, other parts of Colorado. I have a hard time sometimes getting people that aren't used to this area, just visiting maybe for the first time, to really understand how far they are seeing. You can see to essentially Moab, Utah. If the LaSalle Mountains weren't in the way, you're looking at Moab. The LaSalles are visible on a clear day. You can see Shiprock in the Navajo Nation. You can see way into New Mexico. It's amazing. It's a time for reflection. I like thinking of the drive like that. And do imagine how it would have looked where you would have had maybe small family groups or maybe bigger communities dotting the landscape. There's been a lot of fires recently in Mesa Verde. You're going to see a lot of burn. It depends on a little bit how you count and how you look at it, but between about 70 and 80% of the park has burned since the park was created in 1906. So a lot of the park is burned. But that lets you see further. And maybe in some cases, it might have been a little bit more like the ancestral Puebloans, what they would have been seeing. They were using the trees, so there would have been maybe some more openings, but also they were growing crops, more of that type of clearing, that sort of thing. It's use it as a time of reflection. Go slow, stop at some of those pullouts, soak in those views, and that'll set you up even better. But I think that really goes into give yourself plenty of time to visit Mesa Verde. It's not a park you can see much at all in an hour or two. Just drive time makes that impossible. It's not just me thinking like you want to really get deep into it. What I hope you do. But to see a cliff dwelling, you have at least a 40-minute drive. That's going straight to Spruce Tree House, and that's one way. 40 minutes one way. To see some of the loops, that sort of thing, you have at least a half day, probably more like a whole day. You want to see Chapin area and Wetherell, that's probably 2 days, at least a day and a half. So give yourself, I would highly suggest at least a day for Mesa Verde.
As an interpretive ranger here and a storyteller, what's the story you like to tell the visitors when they arrive here?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I can't get away from it. I'm an interpretive ranger and a public historian, and with that environmental history background. And it is that story that people and landscape go together. You can't understand one without the other. And I really think that's true everywhere. And you see that very well in Mesa Verde. Maybe it's harder in our own modern lives to see it, how much we're still a product of our landscape. And I don't even care if that's an urban environment, in a city. It still shapes where you get your food, how you live, what entertainment looks like, all of those type of things. But you're almost too close to the project when you're thinking about your own life. So when you're coming to a place like Mesa Verde and looking at something maybe you're not as familiar with and thinking about how it connects to modern people today, I think that story of landscape, us being part of the landscape with the natural world, becomes so much clearer. And that's why I love this park so much.
This might sound like a repetitive question for you,
Sorry.
But how do you, find peace and understanding in this park? Do the structures, does the Mesa Loop, does it humble you? And do you sit and just spend time thinking about the communities that were here?
Absolutely. It's very humbling. Looking across this greater landscape, even well out of Mesa Verde from up high like Park Point, or maybe getting more intimate and taking it. Even when I'm leading a tour, I try and give myself a couple seconds to take a breath, take in the site, and slow down a little bit in those tours. Going around Mesa Top Loop, more than any other park I've worked in, just slowing down. I felt like slowing down is so much more important here. And going slow about your visit. Maybe spend more time than you normally would at an overlook, sitting on a bench or a rock or whatever it is, and see a little bit how light changes across the cliff dwelling. You'll notice things that you didn't notice 30 seconds ago if you just give yourself the time. It's magical in that way. Also, growing up pretty close to Mesa Verde, this was the park that I thought of when I was 12 years old, telling people that I wanted to be an interpretive park ranger. And for some reason, that made me almost, for a while, imagine myself working here even less, like it was almost unattainable or something. So even in that maybe more personal, maybe even a little bit selfish way, being back here in a region that I love so much means a lot. So I have that personal connection, as do a lot of people that work here in many different ways. But also being part of telling the story of the ancestral Puebloans, the modern Pueblo people, Southwest as a whole, and how that fits into the American story and the story of the world. I can't imagine doing anything else.
I don't think that's selfish at all, because you're here with the purpose of educating and telling the story of the ancestral Puebloans, and I think that's anything but selfish if you're here to tell other stories and bring this experience to visitors. So I thank you for that. But in the Mesa Verde Museum, there's this area of people regret returns, of taking different artifacts that are in the park and returning them. One of them, and I was looking, came in a letter with a note, and it was dated my birthday in 1997. And I couldn't help but think it almost was connected all back to this park, about the deep history here, and that, my birthday 27 years ago, somebody was collecting an artifact and sending it back because of that regret. And even that little area of this park tells a deep story of the transformation of human beings. I think that letter specifically stated that they were a young kid thinking that they were doing something to collect a memory, and now they realize as they've grown older that they were removing something that no longer has its context. And I thought that was really special to read, even just the transformation of modern humans that come here and have this deep spiritual connection or reverence for this place, that years later, when they're not here, they realize, maybe I should return this back to where it should be, because that place is protecting something really special. And I find that really unique about this place, that it's kind of transforming people's hearts and brains in real time, which is really cool.
When I hear that thought you had, I think that's another reason why don't be afraid to ask questions and be on that path of learning when you're visiting here. People hardly ever take pottery sherds and do it maliciously, right? It's because they're excited and they're learning. So maybe if that person would have asked more questions when they were visiting Mesa Verde the first time, they would have learned how damaging that could be. But they learned eventually, right? And I hear that as a story of ask those questions. Don't be afraid to learn. That person learned, even though it might have taken a few years. But
yeah, it's quite a learning experience being here beyond just learning about the ancestral Puebloans. I mean, as human beings, we've learned so much from indigenous tribes and descendants of these communities, from agriculture to building to just land management in general. So not only have we applied those principles in our day-to-day lives, but when you're here to really experience it, it makes you feel really small, which is a special feeling, I think.
Yeah, I definitely feel small in Mesa Verde. I definitely do. That's why the tribal consultation and even the more informal conversations with the affiliated pueblos and tribes is so important. It's such a learning opportunity. And I would venture to say almost pretty much everyone that works at Mesa Verde would say the exact same thing.
We have some awesome episodes coming up after this one. It's been great working with you in the park, and we meet with Satchel next, and we're talking about this cultural significance even deeper into this park, and then two wonderful archaeologists as well. So excited to dive into those episodes. But are there any final thoughts you have about this amazing place, or encouragement for visitors who are maybe doing the Grand Tour in Colorado and going to Rocky Mountain and Black Canyon and Great Sand Dunes? What sets this park apart from the rest of the parks in the country, and why should they make this a part of their tour around the national parks?
Yeah, come. Mesa Verde is a really special place, and that overt cultural story we have here is going to complement those type of grand tours so well. You'll see more connections, especially if you're going like more of the Utah kind of grand tours, where there is an ancestral Puebloan story, even Zion, Canyonlands, Arches, Hoven, Mesa Verde, all those parks. By coming to Mesa Verde, you'll be able to compare your experience here to those parks, and I guarantee it'll be richer for it.
And it's always hard asking where your favorite park is. It's like choosing between your favorite child, right?
Yes.
But I'm sure, like you said, going to all these cultural parks only enhances your experience at each one. You learn a little bit more at each one, and I think build a little bit more reverence and appreciation for the communities that have survived and thrived in amazing landscapes like this one. Yeah,
maybe that's Mesa Verde helps show why it's so hard to pick a favorite park. How can you compare the story that Mesa Verde's telling to something like Rosie the Riveter World War II home front, the National Park Service site, or Statue of Liberty, or San Antonio Missions, or Grant Coors Ranch, or the ones we think that are more natural, like something like Black Canyon or Yellowstone, Glacier, Olympic. They're all telling an important part of the story of America and the world as a whole. Picking and choosing one of those, especially as a park ranger, is really difficult. But I will say Mesa Verde is pretty high up there for me.
I love that answer, and that's largely why people say America's best idea. So
agreed.
Yeah, Dalton, thank you very much for the time, and it's an amazing place you get to work at and tell the story of, and I sincerely appreciate your work, so thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is a blast, and on a weird rainy day we've been having, it's been lovely being outside with you and being able to smell the rain, hear the rain. It's awesome.
Thanks for checking out this edition of the Safe Travels podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. Dalton is an incredible park ranger who has so much passion for Mesa Verde. So if you like this type of content, it would mean a whole lot to me if you liked, commented, and subscribed. And until next time, safe travels.